Welcome to Defying the Odds podcast, the podcast where grit, resilience, and drive take center stage. I am Leonovsky, political refugee from the Soviet Union, and now professor of entrepreneurship.
I'm Victor Salcida, a formerly incarcerated individual turned software engineer and social entrepreneur on a mission to empower justice-impacted individuals through technology, education, and systemic change.
In 2018, I was fortunate to have Victor as one of my students while he was incarcerated. Fast forward, we're both free to find opportunities, challenge stereotypes as business partners, community leaders, and co-anchors of this life-changing podcast, where we dive deep into powerful conversations with guests who have shattered their own barriers and defied their own odds.
On each episode, we're here to bring you not just stories, but strategies, real tools to help you take on challenges in life, business, and beyond.
So tune in, be inspired, and get ready to defy your own odds.
This is Defying the Odds podcast, where no challenge is too great to conquer.
Let's go. All right. Well, hey, Victor, what a crazy evening we had here in Pacific Northwest. I know you're all the way out in Texas. We had a huge storm out here, and the blue energy from pretty much everywhere here. And talk about trying to defy the odds. No, tell me, what's going on for you?
The big thing. Yeah, so just a lot of things going on with the workout group that I'm involved in, F3. We had a individual who lost his wife a couple of days ago, but we gathered together last night to do a flag salute where we just grabbed all of our shovel flags and planted them in front of his house just to show, that we are there to support him through these, super challenging times. I think he's seen him this morning. Was welcomed and just really appreciated the gesture, but shows just what community can and should look like. Powerful gesture, and just thankful to be a part of something like that. And then some other stories as well, but that's just one that comes to mind.
Yeah, I remember actually I brought you into F3 myself, and I remember 2 years ago my father died. And I was coming back from the funeral, and we turned the corner, and I still cry when I think about it. I turned the corner into the driveway, and I had like 30 flags in my yard. And, we talk about defying the odds here on this podcast. And I think one of the things that I always take away that it's much easier to defy the odds if you have the right community.
For sure.
It really is. And I think we're going to talk a lot about that on this episode, because we have none other than one of our mutual friends, Ginny Burton, with us today, talking about her own journey of defying the odds. And Ginny, welcome.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. I remember you. I'm not sure which one of us knows you first, but I remember you when I was going into the prison, and with another organization that I wasn't running. And what was the name of the org?
Cone and Post-Prison Education Program.
Oh yeah,
post-prison education program. And I came in as a panelist, and you were on the panel, and you just from the first moment I met you, you blew me away. By your sincerity, by your willingness to share your own story, and by just the sheer power that you actually display, both in your speech and now that I know you in your life. And so that's kind of how I know you. Victor, how do you know Ginny?
Yes, I don't know if she remembers it or not, and usually it doesn't if you're coming to come volunteer at a prison. But she came into the Monroe Correctional Complex. I think it was through the post-prison education program, and she came in. She was like, one of the only women up there who shared her story, her experience, and I was just going through that stage of transformation myself, and her story and stories like hers, always inspired me, and just really thankful, for people like her that we have in this world that are, open and vulnerable about, their stories. I think it makes a huge impact. They don't know, the ripple effect that just, coming in, showing up to, a prison after having experienced something like that is just huge. And it does have a ripple effect. Now I want to, go back and do those same things for individuals, give back and share my story, because I've seen the impact that it had on me, and just really thankful that, she was able to do that for many individuals.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's true. And for me as well, I think, doing this work inside the prisons through Defy Ventures has really opened up my eyes to how the impact that we can have individually as catalysts, and the power that then creates in a community. So we're going to talk a little bit about Jenny's story. Ginny,
Yeah.
talk to us about, what does defying the odds mean to you?
Well, I mean, I like to put things in personal terms. So if I considered my own life, I mean, I'm pretty sure that by the time I was 15, I would have been voted most likely to end up in prison. So, which I did, mind you. But where I'm at today, I think it speaks volumes to the idea of defying the odds. I was in active addiction for almost 30 years. I was in and out of the prison system. I have 17 felony convictions. I've served 3 separate prison terms, and have been in jail countless times. Today, I'm a business owner. I have a contract with the Department of Corrections. I work with the state of Tennessee as an executive consultant with Department of Human Services, and I work on government initiatives. And I host a docuseries that is released on the internet that tells the other side of policy that is failing in our nation. So, yeah, I mean, I've completely restored a life that was really spiraling into nowhere. So I think that's a really great definition of defying the odds.
Indeed. What is the docuseries that you host, and how do people find it?
America. It's on YouTube.
What is it called?
Modern America. And I'll make sure that I send a link to you so you can put it in the bio.
Yeah, please send the link. Yeah, Modern America. Please, guys, watch it. So thank you for that. So just briefly tell us more about your experience growing up. As far as you said that you were, you probably would have been voted most likely to go to prison at age 15. First of all, it just shows that you accomplish anything you put your mind to. And even now, but like, what were the circumstances that kind of led you to that place of that really challenging place?
Yeah, well, I mean, first, when I was young, I academically excelled. So I think the turn was surprising for me, to be quite honest with you, because I thought I was normal at first. I mean, really, and I would say that I'm probably a normal person. However, drugs and violence were introduced into my life at a very young age, and I followed suit, really. I was sort of engulfed by the environment around me. My mom was a drug addict. My dad was a drug addict. My dad went to prison, and though I was a pretty decent kid when I was young, it didn't take long for my environment to really have an impact on me. You know, I believe that we're very porous as a species, which means that, a lot of things sort of happen by osmosis. And when we're in specific environments, we acclimate to those environments. And that's exactly what I did. So by the time I was 15, I was a full-blown drug addict. I had started using drugs at the age of 7. They were introduced to me, though I didn't want to do them. And I found very quickly that what they did provide me was acceptance and an escape from the reality that I was existing in.
Yeah, it totally resonates with me as well. It is a point in our times, but also just something that, I think that we had to go through and experience. It makes us who we are today I look at none of my, past experiences as something that, was bad or anything like that. It was just a learning opportunity that I needed in order to grow. And, it seems like, the same transformation happened with you.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And, I lived in that sort of such a long time. And I felt like I was living in a contradiction for multiple decades. So when I was arrested and facing a 4th prison sentence, that's when I turned it around. I was so sick of myself. And when I had picked up drugs, okay, I got out of prison in 2010, the last time. And the goal was to stay clean, but I ended up in an abusive relationship, and I picked up drugs for the last time in 2011. And once I started, I couldn't stop, though I didn't want to use. And so, classically, I stopped when I was arrested. And so I'm super grateful for having the opportunity to be arrested, because it gave me an opportunity to separate myself from that destructive path. And I've been clean ever since. And for me, it didn't matter whether I went to prison or whatever. I mean, honestly, death would have been fine with me. I was shooting for that, but I wasn't gifted that way out. What I did get the opportunity to do was be very uncomfortable and find a way to rebuild myself.
Yeah. And sometimes we just need that space. I don't think like I would have been afforded the opportunity to have something like that if it wasn't for that experience. In many ways is a blessing in disguise, as some will describe it.
100%.
I've noticed, I've never been incarcerated, though at this point I've spent about 11 years in prison, going in and out as a volunteer. But what I've noticed is many people talk about the prison system as kind of the worst and the best thing that happened to them. And we can have quite a discussion about the failures of our justice system, and especially how our incarceration really doesn't solve many of the problems, but creates it. But I think that taking what I've noticed is leaving the environment, the toxic environment that has created the problems, is often all that someone needs in order to blossom. And even though prison itself, you guys can talk about that environment in a second, but like, even though you have this environment, there are opportunities. There are opportunities to grow, opportunities to learn, and you took it, right? So tell us about that experience once you landed yourself in prison, and what was that moment of like, you know what, I'm done with this. I am turning the page. Was there a specific moment, or was it like a gradual? What was the experience like?
Yeah, well, first I want to say that moment happened the moment that the handcuffs were put on me. I knew I was done. So, I ended up not having to go to prison the last time, but I do want to sort of respond to a little bit of what we're talking about, the prison system. So first, I want to say that if you haven't been to hell, you don't know how to navigate your way out of it. So I think we have an overly high expectation of a machine, of regular people who are coming in to be. So, and what I mean when I say that is that, the system itself only can give you what the system knows, right? And so we have to look at like what that system is. First, it's a timeout, because we have done something to perpetrate against another person, in a way that's very unlawful and in society for whatever reasons, right? And the thing that I value about that is that the victimization that occurred to me was not an excuse for my behavior and me victimizing somebody else in the community. So it was very necessary for me and many others that I know to be removed from that destructive path. And that's what prison provided. And that's what you're talking about, right? So it gives us an opportunity to create a foundation. Now, does it provide all of the necessary tools and resources? No. But again, I would say that if you haven't been to hell, you don't know how to navigate your way out of it. So if you don't know about the underlying causes on a personal level, how can you develop an environment to help an individual overcome those things, right? Which is something that I'm doing today, and we'll get to that later. So I like to give the system and the people that work within that system a bit of grace. Otherwise, I walk around pissed off all the time. I can talk about how it's failing, but that's like saying that the person that grew up in an affluent area would somehow know, and not that everybody that works in a prison is affluent, but I think it's a good sort of illustrator, a descriptor, that somebody from an affluent area would know how to best solve my problems coming from a place of poverty and low income. There's no connection there. There's no real understanding of that environment, right? Just like I couldn't tell you how to navigate your society if you came from that place, because I come from this other place. So I think that we have to give people grace, right? And what we have to do is really people with lived experience to come in and redevelop that tool. Lived experience is in those who have overcome the underlying causes. So I just want to say that, because I think that we villainize systems a lot of the times, when systems are literally functioning like a machine. They are responding to it like any other market business. They're responding to the outcomes that are occurring in our society, right? So, and when I say that, that means that, what does that mean? That means that as an individual, as a consumer within that market, the only way that I can stop employing that system is to learn how to overcome my own stuff. So that's really how I focus on things. I try to put it in a sort of a political economy lens, as opposed to or an economic lens, as opposed to a personal and emotional lens, because otherwise everybody's running around all crazy and emotional and wanting to do stuff that's very counterproductive. But in regards to me with my last incarceration, I ended up not having to go to prison. Ari Cohn with the post-prison education program asked me not to take a deal. I don't like being in jail. It's a very toxic environment. I'd rather be in prison any day of the week. However, he asked me not to take a deal, so I didn't. My mom had died previously that year, which contributed to my spiraling out of control and ending up where I was. I typically don't end up in incarceration if I'm not on drugs. So I'd gotten super crazy. I was removed. Ari asked me not to take a deal, and he hired an attorney to help me fight my stuff. I sat in jail for a number of months, and I was able to have my charges transferred to King County from Pierce County, and I was able to enter into the King County Drug Court. Drug Court told me, you're not going to make it. People with histories like yours don't make it through programs like this. But there were some maneuvers that had occurred between district attorneys. So the court itself really didn't have jurisdiction to say whether I was going to enter or not. So that was kind of awesome, because I had participated prior to my previous prison sentence in a TV show with Dan Satterberg, who was the district attorney for King County. So I had a little bit of leverage, but me on my own, I wasn't going to be able to access and utilize that leverage, but Ari was. So I ended up in drug court, and it was wonderful, because not that it was easy or fun. They gave me a run for my money, and I challenged myself not to take shortcuts. So I really wanted to build a strong foundation. So I utilized the proper chain of command in all things. There were two times where I was sanctioned because they accused me of using, because I had dilute UAs, and then I went and got hair follicle tests. But I ended up spending 18 months in the drug court. When I graduated from the drug court, I opted to continue on with my drug and alcohol treatment counselor for another 18 months, because I really thought about the history of my problems, and I decided 10 miles in, 10 miles out. So I wanted to really get longevity when it came to, dealing with one of the biggest problems that I had, which was drug addiction, and so drug courts and incarceration, as you guys mentioned, they're not necessarily set up, and I would argue drug courts aren't either. They're set up to deal with one dimension of an individual's problem, right? Either putting somebody in timeout or dealing with drug addiction only. So what I had done was I started to really think about my underlying causes, and I was trying to piecemeal a process together for myself that helped me address the things that I was challenged with, some mental health stuff, family of origin issues, personal relationships, education, employment, housing, different things like that, that really I had become very unfamiliar with or didn't have the skills to navigate. So I used that time. I used my time in jail, and then I used my time in drug court very intentionally. I said to myself, if I play my cards right, this will be the last time I have to utilize space to just focus on myself. And so that's what I did. I built a foundation. I was kind of winging it, right? But I developed a process for myself that dismantled my thinking, because that's where my problems really originate from, is my thinking. And I really took a look at that, because when I went into jail, when I originally went into jail, I saw how I was saying things to myself that weren't necessarily true. And what I wanted to do was really take a look at where that came from. And I won't go too far into all of that, but this is what I can tell you. I developed a process, and I really implemented it in my life, and I utilized it from the moment that I was incarcerated, and I still utilize it today. And I turned that into something that I've turned into a business, and we can get more into that later. But what that did was it set me up to challenge everything that caused me to do things to destroy myself. And I just continue to use that framework. I would pick up the framework and move that into other areas of my life, because I was determined to become successful. I was determined to stop screwing myself over. I was determined to stop using drugs. I was determined to not become incarcerated. And I was determined to love myself, because I knew that that was the biggest problem that I had.
Wow. Victor. Yeah.
No, thanks for sharing. And yeah, I'd love to dive more into the business later on. But yeah, the question I have for you now is just since, reentering and reintegrating back into society, what has been the importance for community, or what has community looked like for you when defying the odds post-release?
Oh, communities played such a major part in my success. First, I just want to say, and this is what I say to a lot of folks that I work with today, is consider a house, right? A house is an independent structure, but how many pieces of material are involved in developing that independent structure, right? A house is not a house on its own. Like, it takes a tremendous amount of community to make that house stand. And so when I look at my life in the same way, first, if we consider, my involvement with the post-prison education program, what my involvement with that program really did for me was it helped me to be aligned with a community of people who understood where I was coming from. First, I was involved with other former prisoners. I was involved with, and I made the decision with Ari Cohn, because we had a very close relationship prior to his death, is to trust one person. And that guy came into my life and stuck by me when I really, there was nothing in it for him. And that was part of my process in redeveloping that messaging, right? It's like, why is this guy helping me? What is in it for him? And I decided that because there was nothing in it for him, there must be something good about me, right? So, and that's really what community does. Community loves and accepts you for where you're at, especially when it's a community of familiarity, right? So, there was the post-prison education program and the connection with former prisoners, and seeing other people that were accomplishing tasks that I felt like I was incapable of doing. And then I got involved with Narcotics Anonymous, and I made that a huge part of my community. Then I became involved with education, and I made that environment part of my community. Now I have a vast array of community across many spectrums that, a lot of people that come from where I come from don't necessarily know how to identify with. But, I identify today with the larger part of humanity. And I don't think that I'm any different than anybody else. And so community has played such a major role, but it started very small for me. It started with communities of familiarity, especially with those who are accomplishing things that I personally didn't know how to accomplish.
I think that's so powerful, right? It's so powerful. And so I just want to highlight some of the things you just said is, a house is not a house by itself, that it takes a community to build a house. And if you think of, if I think of my own life as a house, again, it's these pieces come together, and you can't look at people by themselves in isolation, just like you can't look at problems by themselves. I think that's what you were talking about, the system, and the system is just a machine. But right now the machine is set up to deal with like one little thing. And it reminds me of that, three blind wise men, looking at an elephant, and one holds on a leg and says, "Oh, an elephant is a trunk or a column," and the other one, "Oh, it's a plate," or the other one, "Oh, it's a hose." And the thing is, it's an elephant. And so, and community really brings that in. I love the fact that the other piece that I just want to highlight what I heard is there's often, in my experience too, there is a person. There is a person or a group of small group of people who make inordinate, by comparison, meaning, an inordinate difference in somebody else's life. I am lucky to be such a person for Victor. You had Ari, and like, I love what you said about like, there's nothing in it for him. There must be something good about me. It's crazy how powerful that is. And I think that will speak volumes to people who are listening to it. Because if you feel that you don't have anything good about yourself, how can you grow? How can you thrive? And those people who come in and become you won't even try. Exactly. And I love the fact that you're talking about, community is important, but community in as a whole is too general. Community of like-minded people are people who you can relate to, and the people who actually do. I loved what you said, do what I didn't think I could do. And here they are doing it. And that role modeling is so powerful. So I just think that just by that example, you are giving a roadmap to defying the odds. But you mentioned several times about your framework that you developed while you were sitting in jail, and how this framework has transformed not just your life, but lives of so many others. And it's now your business. This is your platform. Talk to us about it, because that is so powerful. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, again, it has to do with all the components. And that's what I try to do, Leo. I try to develop a roadmap, because I sat in a place for so long where I truly did not think I was capable. I thought that I was destined to remain my environment, where I came from, that was my lot. And what I learned was it's just not true. And I also learned that whatever we tell ourselves is the truth, right? That if I say I can, I can. And if I say I can't, I can't. And those examples that are similar to me, that overcome things that I think that I couldn't, those are folks that ignite that spark that exists within each of us, right? And are able to fan that flame. And so the process, first I was arrested. Okay. And I was like, okay, I was removed from the destructive path. That was so necessary in my life. I would not be where I am today had I not have been removed, because I did not have the ability to stop on my own. I'm almost certain 100% that I would have killed myself, or somebody else would have killed me. There were a number of things that happened that make me know that would be the case. So the police saved my life. Mind you, they don't have the answers for all of the things. But what they did have the answer to was, rescuing me from the thing that I couldn't change on my own. Second, there was the realization that this guy has nothing, there's nothing for him to gain aside from knowing that maybe he did the right thing. But there was no personal gain for him in showing up in my life. So obviously there was something good. So that's number two. So that sparked a little bit of awareness that maybe I'm not as bad as I think I am. So I had to say to myself, well, what makes me think I'm so bad? Yes, there are all of the things that I've done, but have I always felt this way about me? So I developed this process where I started questioning myself. What is it that I do believe? Where did those thoughts come from? How can I change those thoughts? Because am I going to be able to be successful if I continue to think about myself in this manner? And the answer was no. I did not want to live in that purgatory anymore. It was a very painful place to live. I hated myself for a very long time. I had a whole lot of reasons why it was appropriate for me to hate myself, because I was everything that I didn't respect. And so then I had to take a look at that word. So I started taking a look at words like trust and respect. What do those things actually mean? You know, and I gave this example to my students inside of the prison. So I teach this process inside of prisons today. I teach men. I like that I teach men, because men don't often have a lot of things available to them that help them to go deep. Men have a lot of externals, right? So we tend to deny that men are human beings on the inside and that they have fractured foundations. So we typically hand them vocational opportunities and education, as opposed to understanding who we are, why I am who I am. Why did I get to where I am today? Do I like the circumstances of my life? How can I rebuild who I am so that those externals are actually sustainable, right? And so my business today really focuses on that. How can we redevelop the foundation so that we can build the house so that the components of the house will not fall down? So I have a curriculum. My program inside of prisons is called the OUT program, Overhaul through Unrelenting Transfiguration. If you look up the definition of those words, I like acronyms, but I also am really connected to meaning. If you look up the definitions of those words, Overhaul, we break down and redevelop the entire process. Unrelenting, we do it without ceasing. Transfiguration, it's not quite transformation. When you look up transfiguration in the dictionary, it talks about a metamorphosis. It's like the caterpillar going into the cocoon and coming out the butterfly. So this process that I put people through, and I say put people through because it is not easy, and I am not always sensitive about it. Like, I'm not a fluffy kind of chick. But what I do is I help them dismantle their thought processes. Do you like the circumstances of your life? How did you get here? What were the goals that you had when you were young? So we go in and it's like inventorying your pantry. We do it in a somewhat impersonal way while also being personal at the same time. And then we look at, what do you want your life to look like? And then we construct that. And I don't tell you what to think. You tell yourself. And so I have a 10-module curriculum, and I go in, it's very intensive. I meet with my students once a week. We do a tremendous amount of support and case management work. I'm in OCC, the Olympic Correction Center in Forks. I have a great relationship. I usually do about 17-hour days out there. That includes driving every Monday. My students are in touch with my executive assistant through Securus. I bring in a multitude of community members that provide, because I truly believe that it takes a village. And so I develop that village on the outside in all of the major release counties. And so I provide relationship building opportunities with these community partners inside of the prison once per quarter. So I bring folks in that provide legal support, housing support, treatment support, education, employment, and I bring them in and we do a huge gathering, but I only provide this to the guys that are doing the work. Because this is what I know. If you aren't doing the work to redevelop yourself, all of those external components are not sustainable. My goal is to redevelop a prison system. So all of those things that you were talking about, Leo, you're right. Things are handled one-dimensionally, and they, to give grace to the folks that have developed the system, they only know what they know, right? So it's like you need the lived experience relationships, people who have actually overcome the challenge of the contributing factors that brought them to prison in the first place, often multiple times. You need the collaboration with those of us to help redevelop that system to be very intentional. Everything I do in my life is intentional. Why am I doing it? That doesn't mean that I don't eat cheesecake or whatever and when I don't really want to, because it's delicious, but it's not always serving me, right? But with most things, I try to be intentional, specifically with this system, because I truly believe that we can utilize incarceration as a tool, as an educational platform to equip individuals to hit the ground running, to redevelop their lives, and truly impact recidivism through intention. Because this is the thing, data points cannot be accurate if we are not focusing on deficit. So I assess deficit initially. We look at a multitude of different areas because I cannot effectively claim any kind of outcomes for the people that I am serving if I first don't understand what their challenges were. So I'm working with a data company that is helping me to develop a software that's never been developed around reentry before, where we assess deficit, we show progress through the process, and then we track outcomes on the back end of it. Right now, 75% of my students that have been released or are in partial confinement are clean and sober. They're reunifying with their families. They're connected with education. They are gainfully employed. They're stably housed. And these are the kind of outcomes that we need to be looking at. What typically happens in social services, and I only know because I worked in them, which is why I am where I am today, because it's an ineffective system that is supporting the destruction of human life. But what they typically tend to look at is what am I doing as a program to address these symptoms? They're not looking at how did you fall into the river in the first place? Let's get you to stop going to the riverbank right there because it's dangerous, right? And instead, what these service agencies are often doing is, oh, you've fallen into the river. Here, let me give you a life preserver, and then I'm going to bring you some food so you can be comfortable right there in the river, even though you're partially hypothermic, right? So what I want is to be able to pull people out of the river that are in the river and to help prevent people from falling into the river. And the only way we can do that is through education. We cannot do that for anyone. I cannot help you to develop your quad strength so that you can climb Mount Rainier. I can't go work out in the gym for your quads to be ready for Mount Rainier. Only you can do that. I can show you what I do and teach you how to get up when you don't want to, but I cannot do it for you. And we have a humongous do-for system that is costing us trillions of dollars in this country on so many different levels. And so, we need to be able to save money so that we can divert those resources where they are necessary and actually help people to become contributing members of our communities, where their children aren't going into foster care, where they're not continuing to go to prison over and over again, and where they're actually contributing to society and living in integrity.
That is so powerful. What is the name of your program and how do people find it?
Yeah, it's O-UT. You can log on to my website, www.
Yeah, go ahead. www.
Yeah, www.
Hold on a second. I'm going to type it out so it's going to be on the screen. www.
O-UT.org.
So O hyphen out,
UT.
like an out. Yeah. O hyphen. That's the hyphen. Yeah, right. Yep.
Hyphen is the shorthand word for through.
Like that. Yeah.
Yes.
There we go. www.o-ut.org. What an awesome name, by the way. So cool. That is really powerful. And in the notes after this, we're going to have a transcript of this recording, and I'm really looking forward to kind of highlighting the key elements that you were talking about. But the things for me that really stuck is that the path has to start with the right mindset. And the right mindset is, let's not hand people life preservers. Let's figure out why they fell in the first place. And let's teach them how to swim. And let's teach them how to swim. And this idea that nothing started for you until you started that process, right? But the first thing that you said is, and that is really key. There is a function piece here. Remove from the river. You gotta remove from the river first. And then find a mentor and a champion, right? Address limiting beliefs, reverse self-hatred into trust and respect, redevelop foundations, overhaul the habits, right? And then and then basically then rebuild, create a new foundation, and then from there, then these other tools can help, right? But until then, they didn't. Victor, what's your thought? Because you've gone through this process yourself.
Yeah, no, it's interesting and totally agree. You do have to address, what got you there in the first place, right? Like, coming from me, I totally had to, change my environment, my way of living, coming into the prison experience. I only knew, one community, one way of living. That changed when I entered the prison system. Then I seen folks coming from all different walks of life. It wasn't, just my gang. It was, other just normal, what I consider to be normal people that came into prison. They're talking about fishing and hiking. I'm like, people do that? I thought that was just stuff you seen on TV. So to get that exposure was cool, but also just kind of, sharing your stories of, your upbringing and what brought you up. I think a lot, you're able to get a lot of value out of those conversations, because it does get you to show like what caused you to be there in the first place. And being removed from the situation, I think, is so important, because it's easy to try to do it, or actually it's really hard to try to do that while you're still stuck in the the situation that got you in there. So do think that it's really important work that you're doing, and the framework that you're using is beneficial. I had to completely remove all of my friends that I hung out with before prison. I no longer hang out with any of them. Some people are able to continue those friendships, but all of my friendships I had to cut ties with, because those were individuals that I didn't want to be associated with anymore. And I had to, strip myself of that environment, and really thankful for, that opportunity, and do believe, it is needed. We do have to address the harms that got us into the place. So, thank you so much, Ginny, and for your program. I do want to, just highlight that this work is important, and just incredibly thankful for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's honestly, the work has been such a blessing in my life. And it's what's kept me upright over this last number of months, which has been really, I want to say, like, my life is amazing today, but it involves a lot of work, and it hasn't been easy, and challenge and trauma have not been removed from my path at all. But I've just stayed committed. And so, when I started this process in my own life and for myself, I just continued to build on it. And I revert back, like, my process hasn't changed, right? I just revert back to the things that have worked anytime something gets hard or challenging. And it continues to be a way of life for me that helps me to stay on top.
So that actually brings us to a really challenging topic for you and for us, and that is your son. I happen to know your son. He was one of my students, and he also the one who I brought into F3 the same way as I did Victor. His nickname was Wolf in the prison. It was Toast in F3, and I forgot why, because he liked bread. I think.
Toastmaster.
Toastmaster. That's right. That's why we called him Toast. That's right. Yep. He was a distinguished Toastmaster, and I was a mentor at the Toastmaster program as well as Defy. And so, I remember your son as the most vibrant, one of the most interesting, intelligent, dynamic young men I have ever met. And so talk to us about him. Let's honor his memory, what happened to him, as well as how does this process help you? Because I know our listeners have either will go through or have gone through something, because something like that is outside of our control.
Yeah. First, I won't say this without crying. But thank you guys for being a part of his life. My son took his life in July. He was his entire life up until the last, I guess, like your year or so, one of the most vibrant, intelligent, driven, upbeat, charismatic, compassionate, loving people that I've ever known. He got out of prison. He served prison time. I really believe that it has a lot to do with my lack of appropriate parenting because of my drug addiction. He would have never ended up there had I been what he needed me to be as a parent. However, I try not to beat myself up about what can't be changed. He got out of prison and he was seeing a therapist. I truly believe that they gave him medication that had an impact on his brain chemically. And I think it changed something in his brain. He had stopped talking to me for about a year because that happens sometimes with kids. And he called me up about 2 or 3 months prior to, mind you, the whole time he stopped talking to me, I was emailing him. He would respond sometimes, but he called me up a few months before he took his life, and he wanted to come home. And I said, of course, you can come home. So it took him a little time. We were talking on the phone almost every day, and he had changed. He was paranoid and self-defeating, and he was not the same kid. And honestly, I thought it was drug-induced. So he flew to my house 2 weeks prior to taking his life. And I had learned only after the fact that he had multiple suicide attempts prior to actually completing the act of suicide. But he had come to stay with me he was there for 2 weeks. We were trying to help him get back on track. He was not on drugs. Something had shifted in his brain. There was schizophrenia in his father's side of the family. However, he had been prescribed Adderall and had taken ketamine, and he was being microdosed through a clinic and not necessarily a medical clinic. And after doing some research, I've heard that ketamine microdosing does not support positive mental health. And so he had kind of spiraled out of control. The day that he committed suicide, I went to speak at a kickoff campaign for a friend of mine that was running for the Supreme Court early the next morning. Then I went to Ellensburg because I was walking across the state for fentanyl awareness with a person running for the U.S. Senate. And as my husband got home, because he had dropped me off in Ellensburg, he called me and he had found Joey hanging in the backyard. So that's been one of the hardest things that I've ever experienced in my life. He was my firstborn child. Joey was an amazing human being. There have been multiple times over the last 4 months. We just celebrated what would have been his 33rd birthday on November 16th. There have been multiple times over the last 4 months where I contemplated whether I even wanted to be on this earth. But this process that I developed in my life helped me to really take a look at what it is that I'm doing, what I'm supposed to be doing. I had a dream where there were many souls that said, we need your help. We need your help. And there was a woman that I spoke to, and she said, those are the people that you're helping inside of the prisons. And I just want to say the OUT program, the back end, everything that I'm doing in the community, Joey helped me develop that, because when he got out, I picked him up. I took him to report. I had friends that were coming to take him shopping and contribute to his success when he got out. I was able to help him get a car. I was able to help him get a place to live. And so everything that we're doing with the OUT program was something that Joey and I brainstormed that we wanted to do as a program for people that were getting out, so we could teach them how to be out and be free. This is, again, like, the hardest thing in the world is to lose a child, and especially when you know that you failed that child. However, there's no amount of remorse that's going to bring him back. And so what I try to do is I go into the prisons and I share openly about where I'm at emotionally. I try to teach people in society and in the prisons that you can get through anything and not use drugs and not drink. that being of service to others is the antidote to all of the things that cause me to struggle. So, when things get really hard, and they really have over the last 4 months, I go back to the basics. I take a look at my messaging. I surround myself with my community. I make sure that I'm doing stuff for others that help me to feel like I am contributing to the stream of life. And I do it all in the memory of my son, because the only thing I can really do different today is try to make sure that I'm doing the best that I can in the lives of those that I love. And I still have 2 children that are on this earth that have their own struggles. And so I've really tried to show up in the ways that I feel like I didn't do for Joey when he was younger. So I appreciate you asking. And, if anybody that's watching this or listening, you can get through anything if you decide that you can get through that thing. But it's the moment that we decide that we can't, that we start to do things that are destructive. And, when my mom died in 2011, I almost destroyed my entire life over that. And I decided that I wasn't going to do that same thing in the memory of my son.
Thank you.
Wow. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing and being vulnerable. That's a lot. Something real quick, and I know we are going through, the holidays coming up, and just do appreciate you highlighting the fact of, just kind of, your son's experience for others to listen to, maybe in case they're struggling, as you mentioned. Recently just seen a quote, I think it was on Instagram or X or whatever it's called, but it said, if suicide ever crosses your mind, just know I'd rather listen to your story than attend your funeral. Yeah. I think that's, so true. And people, there are people reach out, people want to hear you out, and we're here for you. So just want to, leave the audience with that. But also, Joe, Wolf, I met him in prison. What was this, 2013, 14 at WSR. And we had an interesting relationship. At first we were just like, we didn't talk to each other too much. And then over the years, we developed like a really cool relationship. Never saw that coming, and just really, really thankful. And then didn't know what it was going to look like. Like, we went to different prisons, never thought I'd see him again, and somehow we ended up connecting once we were released. But one of the stories that I wanted to share with you all is one that came to mind to me from Wolf or Joseph is his training. He might have shared it with you or not, but we're doing every year 4th of July. I run the marathon, or not a marathon, a mile run. And we'll try to like compete against the whole prison every year. It was pretty cool. I think I won it like a year or 2 in a row. And then I remember Joseph, like he was saying, he's like, I'm going to get you next year. And I'm just like, whatever. And he's literally training for it, like throughout like the whole year. He was putting in the work, and I was just like, whatever, like I'm just gonna, I wasn't putting in the work. And we ended up training or racing rather, and he ended up getting me that race. And that was a time in my life where I was just like super proud of him for being able to, put in the work, persevere, and show like what is possible. He wasn't like a runner or anything like that a year before. So he really just, defied the odds. He was an exemplary leader, and, just showed what was possible. I really respected him for that. And I think that's what really helped like our relationship grow. After release, we met up, plenty of times, developed a even better relationship than what we had in prison. And then, ended up finding out about, what happened. It was, unfortunate. And just, it's hard, reentry is difficult. He's reached out to me plenty of times to chat. Some of those conversations are hard, but, you just want to be there for them as much as you can be. And, I really appreciate you for bringing Joseph into this world. He's a really incredible individual. So sad that he had to leave us early, but it was for a better reason.
Thanks, Victor. Yeah, he was the fastest guy in WSR. He ran a 4 minute and something. I don't know how many second mile, but he was really tall. So 6'4". So it was, he was able to use.
Yeah, no, it is
He
really powerful.
Pounds. He was 315 pounds at the age of 15. So,
oh my gosh.
Yes, he was very overweight. Mountain Dew was his favorite. So he turned it all around. He defied the odds in so many ways. He was a self-taught math genius, whiz at calculus, and he was just wicked smart. Like the guy that we all knew, that's who he was his entire life up until the last year of his life. And as his mom, it was just, it was crazy. And so I appreciate the message that you gave, Victor, about people. If you feel suicidal, call someone, call your friends, call the hotline.
Yeah. So I just put a number out, right? Call 988. It is so important as a message here. Suicide is a permanent solution to an impermanent problem, temporary problem. And there are people who will support you and who would rather listen to your story than attend your funeral. We talk about just how painful it has been for you. And I know my heart goes out to you. One of the things I just want to say is that the way you share your story on social media, on Facebook, and you talk about your hard days, and you talk about your connection to your community, to your faith, and how you are able to persevere, and your experience is what is really helping others defy the odds. We're coming to the end of the hour, and I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for the work you're doing. You have defied the odds. We invited you here partially because you yourself have defied the odds, and you can teach others how. But your example, and hopefully through this podcast, you can immediately see how that can be applicable. If people are interested in finding out more about you or connecting to you, what should they do?
They can find me
how do they contact you? Yeah.
You can find me on social media, V as in Victor. No, I always, anyway, V Ginny, Ginny Burton. That is LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find me on my website with my contact information there, www.vginnyburton.com or o-ut.org. Both of those go to the same website. Just look me up, and I'm more than happy to connect.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for your time, Ginny Burton, everybody. Thank you so much. And, continue to defy the odds, and just know that both Victor and I are here for you. We are here to support you. Call us if you need us. And I hope you get a lot of contacts from this, because what you're doing with your organization, out.org, is transformative. And this is how we transform the system, by bringing leaders like you, high impact people like you, into the leadership roles. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd love to take you guys into the prisons with me too. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And we're taking you to prison with us too. So don't be a stranger. All right. We'll talk soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks so much, Ginny. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Defying the Odds.
We hope you found inspiration, insight, and maybe a new way of looking at the challenges in your own life.
Remember, defying the odds is a mindset, and you have what it takes to overcome anything.
If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, and subscribe.
Until next time, keep pushing forward, stay resilient, and never stop defying the odds.